Founder ASBM University Professor Biswajit Patnaik, Vice Chancellor Professor Kalyan Rai, Co-Vice Samantrai, Dean School of Accountancy, Dean School of Law, Head School of Information Science, Registrar, Controller of Exams, my faculty colleague, and I am Dr. Aparna Das, co-coordinator of the 6 days online certificate program on contract administration. I'd like to extend my warm greetings to the favored resource person and the participants present over here. I welcome you all to the 6 days online certificate program on contract administration jointly offered by ASBM University and Gati Intellect. It is an usual message what oftenly we have heard in the logistics seminars that the complex logistic contracts should be managed very carefully. So we would expect that almost all the companies that do so. They review their key performance indicators in order to improve logistic performance, and in fact, logistic contract management focuses on value optimization, which is quite difficult process. We'll take a look at logistic contract management process in this 6 days. Now I would like to request Professor Samantrai, the Dean School of Business, who has undertaken his PhD in business management for his research work on consumer satisfaction and market dynamics in Indian cellular industry. He has done a lot of market studies related to different industries such as cellular phone, automobiles, tea, retail, shoes, banking, tourism, ready-made garments, etc. And has published a number of research papers in national and international journals. His study on Navakalevara of Lord Jagannath as a tourism experience published by has received a lot of recognition. He has also published a book review and contributed chapters in various books. He has also worked as a chairman of PG Council and also headed the internal quality assurance cell. And I welcome you, sir, to this platform. Now I request you to give the welcome note. Please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rutuparna Das. Good afternoon. Captain Sundra, Resident Gati Intellect, Professor P.J. Matthew, Senior Vice President, Academic Outsourcing Services, Gati Intellect, my dear colleagues and the participants. As the definition says, as I understand, administration, that means contract management as a whole, is nothing but a strategic management discipline which is employed by buyers and sellers. The main objectives are to manage customer and supplier expectations and relationships so that they can control risk and cost, thereby contributing to the organizational profitability and success. Whatever we have seen, it is important that the contracts, if contracts are managed properly or effectively throughout the life cycle, this can deliver savings across all parts of the supply chain. It can save time, boost competitive edge, and add adaptability while improving the bottom line. If done correctly, the contract management process will also offer opportunity to increase the company's value and reduce pitfalls caused by risk exposure. So we can see during COVID-19, that is COVID-19 sent shock waves throughout the world's supply chain, which created disruptions. Prior to pandemic, market leaders or we can supply chain leaders, they felt confident that they had sufficient visibility into supply chains. But when the pandemic came and those who were sounding very confidently, it was dropped very dramatically. The reason companies were confident before the pandemic was because the supply chain transparency was fully understood. Another thing which was tested during this pandemic was that the risk was inevitable, and it was procurement's job to manage it. Companies should look at the beginning of a supply chain relationship as a key moment to prevent the injection of risk in the organization. One of the most effective ways what we see is to detect the risk. So detecting risk can be there if you can monitor the contractual compliances properly. If a supplier begins to deviate from their contractual commitments, then the problem will happen and the disruption will be there. So what we understood, the supply chain contracts are between the buyer and sellers. And the issues like the pricing, volume discount, minimum and maximum purchase quantities, delivering lead times, product or material quality, product return policy. So as a consequence of intensified relations with suppliers, many firms, the supply chain has become a significant source of risk exposure. So in this program, we expect that we will cover firms' use of control practices to manage risks associated with intensified collaboration with supply chain partners. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have Sundra, President Gati Intellect, as a keynote speaker. By a mechanical engineer is having professional qualification in supply chain management, Six Sigma, ISO, logistic management, marketing and general management. Having a more than 42 years of experience in Indian Army, Reliance Logistics, Indian Cements, Dalmia Cements, Gati Infrastructure, and having expertise in supply chain management, contract management, transport management, freight management, cost optimization, infrastructure development, then the distribution and delivery capacity planning, techno-commercial operations. We welcome you, sir, and I request you to give your views regarding this program.
Thank you, Dr. Rituparda, for your kind introduction. Respected Dr. Samantha Rai, Dean ASBM, it's a great privilege and honor for Gati Intellect to be associated with ASBM in hosting series of short education lectures to enable us that we are able to share our working experience integrated with the academics to our professionals who are the future torchbearers for excellence in business. Our association of Gati with ASBM started years back by setting up a center of excellence to propagate immense value of logistics and supply chain. And it's a great privilege and for ASBM that they're offering a very rich portfolio of learning spanning business management, communication, information systems, law for both graduate, postgraduate, and doctorate levels. And we at Gati Intellect take pride that our experience on practical working in the industry will add immense value to the professional fraternity. At Gati Intellect, which is a young 2-year-old organization, it was formed by our mentor, Mr. M.K. Agarwal, with a focus on logistics, supply chain, leadership programs to educate, train, and assess different segments of our people, ranging from 10th standard to postgraduate level. In last 2 years of this journey, we have had a decent progress. We have our focus to fill the gap between demand and supply for work professionals through skill development, upskilling, has started in a positive note. We have currently partnerships with CVIT University at Hyderabad, Jain University in Bangalore, IHMR Jaipur, and of course ASBM. Now we are starting this engagement. Our foundation has been all veterans from the industry have come together. We all have more than a couple of decades of hardcore experience, and the whole objective was that our experiential learning, which is the backbone of our core strength, combined with the academic strength of the university, would give a more effective input to the fraternity practicing professionals. It's a privilege and honor to introduce Professor P.J. Matthews. Professor Matthews, we fondly call him our Guruji. He, of course, is a great teacher and excellent professional in imparting knowledge on supply chain and logistics. He's been also a guide and mentor to us. Professor Matthews' experience for about 50 years spread in professional manager across different sectors of the industry, then his experience as on-the-job training in corporate world, and then as an academic professor has made him, I would call it, an ocean of knowledge, a beast pratama for us in the space of logistics and supply chain. Beyond logistics supply chain, which is his core knowledge, he also has excelled in sharing his knowledge in the areas of human resource, leadership, project management, etc. So it's a privilege that we have Professor Matthews with us to talk to us on a very important subject, again chosen by him, which I feel that it is a nucleus for any success of a business organization. Any organization, large, medium, or small business organization, has collaboration, and collaborations which take place seamlessly across different cross-section of businesses are linked or are bonded by a contract. And if that contract is not well structured, if that contract is not clearly defining the scope, objective of the deliverable by each stakeholder, and in case of, and while executing, if it is not properly monitored, the whole progress of work, and if there is a deviation, how those deviations have to be tackled, these are all integrated part of contract management. And I think so, Professor Matthews taking up this subject is the best person I can at least have come across, and I'm sure we all will benefit out of his learning. With a small introduction about ourselves and thanking the university for giving us the opportunity, I now request Professor P.J. Matthews to start the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you, Dean ASBM, and thank you, Madam, for inviting us to be part of this program. Can I now upload my PowerPoint?
Yes, sir. You can upload, sir.
1 second. Okay, is it visible to everyone?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, participants. Sorry for the technical glitch what we had. It's my pleasure to conduct this particular session. And I would request a few things from the start. Okay, please feel free to ask questions whenever you want. Don't delay it until the end. Now, I have one submission which I made to Professor Pratap as well. This is a very vast subject, and I requested extension of my 2.5 hours time, because I know for a fact, in order to do justice to my participants, I would need additional time. Now, we have broken down this particular session into 2 parts. First part is an overview of the contract development, and the second part is a very interesting session. Is going to be on experiential learning session. Okay, and I do have a panelist with me who is an industrial expert, which I'll talk about as we come along. Okay, so with this introduction, let me start. Okay, so what we are going to see today is the overview of structure of contract. Okay, elements of contract, how to write a contract, right. Sorry for the confusion. There was an error in the slide which is put. Okay, so it's going to be an overview of contract development. So what we're going to see is the definition of contract lifecycle management. What is procurement cycle? What is contract management? What is contract management process? What are the 3 elements to the contract management process? And what is service delivery? And what is the relationship? And what is contract administration? And objectives and conditions of contract management. Foundation for successful contract management. So this is an overall view as to what contract development is all about. Okay, so this is called the procurement cycle. Okay. Okay, this is procurement is entirely a different subject, but just showing you so that you can understand what is procurement cycle. Okay, there are so many aspects to it: identifying the need, developing a business case. What it means is, if you have to get the approval of your senior management, you have to come up with a project report. Okay, that's what it is. And then defining procurement approach, supplier appraisal, tender evaluation, award contract. Okay, and then management and implementation of contract, closure and review of. Right. Now let's try to understand what is contract management. It's a process that enables both the parties to contract to meet their obligations in order to deliver the objectives required from the contract. Okay, contract management is a process wherein both the parties, the vendor as well as the buyer, okay, they should know what their objectives and whether the objectives are met according to what is stated in the contract. The activities of the buyer before, during, and after a contract is signed to ensure that all parties to the contract understand and fulfill their contractual obligations. Now, this is a quotation from the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. It's called CIPS. Okay, just for the information of the participants, CIPS is the apex body when it comes to purchasing internationally. Okay, let's see what are the elements of contract management process. Okay, the first one is called the service delivery management. We will see that more in detail now. Then the relationship management, then contract administration. Okay, let's see what is service delivery management. Focus on ensuring that the service that was commissioned is delivered as specified in the contract to the required level of performance to the desired quality. So you can see here how important the contract is. So the contract has to be precise. The wordings have to be very precise. Okay, so what is stated in the contract has to be delivered. So, so you have to incorporate in the contract whatever is required, and that is what we are going to see for the next 5 days. To the required level of performance, to the desired quality as well. So this is what is service delivery. We will get into that as we go along. Then let's look into what is relationship management. Focus on keeping the relationship between the parties open, constructive, and professional. Focused on resolving or easing tensions, identifying problems. Now, what you have to understand is, even if there is a contract, it does not mean that the relationship between the vendor and the supplier and the buyer is going to be, everything is going to be normal. Okay, there can be issues. There can be deviations from the contract. Okay, there are so many issues which can come up. Okay, but one has to accept. Okay, this is what we call under theory of constraints. However you plan, even then things can go wrong in the end or as we progress. Okay, so what is required is that it has to be very constructive and it has to be professional. Okay, and as we go along, we can see that the contract has to have means whereby wherever there is issues to be accommodated, it has to be accommodated. This is called contract deviations, okay, which will be discussed mutually, and then it has to come to an agreement. Okay, so it's essential to identify the problems well in advance itself, so that it does not boomerang at the end. Okay, now let's see what is contract administration. Very simply, the formal governance of the contract and changes to the contract documentation. Okay, how simple it looks. Contract administration. Focus the formal governance of the contract. Okay, and that is something what we are going to look into. Okay, what is the governance in the contract? What are the ingredients which have to be incorporated in the contract to have a proper governance? Okay, and then changes to the contract documentation. Okay, so contract documentation has to be made with a lot of care and attention. The second part of today's session is going to be on experiential learning lessons, which are meant for preparation of tender. Okay, number one, how to prepare request for quotation, RFP, request for proposal, and request for quotation. Okay, this is something which we will be doing through a panel from an industry expert. And then Okay, then there can be more open discussions with the participants. Right, let's see what are the conditions for a successful contract. Arrangements for service delivery continue to be satisfactory to both the parties. The service delivery continue to be satisfactory to both the parties. Okay, a contract has to be mutually agreed. So whatever is stated in the contract has to be understood, agreed upon by both the parties. Expected business benefits and value for money are being achieved. So value for money is something which is being talked about. We will be talking about value for money as we go along. It is something which is very much mentioned all over, okay, in a contract, value for money, okay, especially when you are doing a work for the government, okay. Yes, the government is all the more concerned about the money which they have to spend from the public exchequer. Then provider is cooperative and responsive. See, this is what is required. You have to be flexible. You have to be adaptive. Customer understands its obligations under contract. Okay. Yes. Okay. It's essential that as far as the customers are concerned, yes, there are certain things as you go along in the contract, as the contract develops, there will be so many issues which may come up. Okay. On the last day, we have a session called contract dispute methods. Okay. Dispute methods in contract management. Okay. There we will be doing some case studies to show how things can be, in spite of all the planning, what things can go wrong and who is responsible for what. Okay. No disputes. Okay. No surprises. Everything should fall in line. Professional and objective debate over changes and issues can be had. See, like what I said before, there can be deviations from the contract. Okay, but then it has to be thoroughly investigated as to why the deviation has happened. Okay, that's something which the customer would look into. Okay, is it a genuine change in the contract? Was it something anticipated or was it something ad hoc what has happened? What comes to my mind is, since I've been living more in the Dubai, I can give you an example of the Burj Al Khalifa, the tallest building in the world now. While the construction was going on, okay, it was given to contractors. There were so many international consultants, from which the contract, the design was taken, and then it was awarded to some very experienced contractors. In spite of all these parameters, in spite of all these precautions which were taken before the construction, as the construction progressed, they faced so many challenges which was totally unexpected. Okay, as the height increases, there were things which they could not even comprehend, even by very experienced consultants. So there were issues, but it was amicably settled because of the technical issues involved in it. And now what happened was ultimately the cost of the project went up. And this was all over the newspapers as well. Okay, efficiencies are being realized. Okay, now that is something which is very much from the project management side. What are the objectives of contract management? Again, value for money is achieved for the taxpayer through full compliance with the contract requirements. See, you are carrying out an activity wherein you are responsible. You are a trustee. You are a contractor. You are a trustee. Okay, for the money you are spending has to be utilized properly, and there has to be a long-term sustainability for whatever you're doing. Okay, and also full compliance with the contract requirements. The contract requirements have to be adhered. whatever means. The terms and conditions of the contract are met in full. See here again, look at this. Provided by the contractor meet the department specific requirements, including delivery of equality and sustainable development goals, and what is paying, so whatever is paid for, should be in accordance with the contract within the budget. Any deviations has to be carried out only with the approval. Now let's look at another definition from CIPS with regard to contract. It's a process of systematically and efficiently managing the contract creation, number one, and that's what we are going to talk in the next session, execution and analysis for maximizing operational and financial performance and minimizing the risk. See, the last part has got a lot of importance, minimizing the risk. Anybody can do anything, but the most important part is to find out what exactly is the risk. We do have a session on this one on the 5th day, wherein we will talk more about the risk. What is the level of risk? Is it high, low, or medium? So the risk factor has to be minimized. So once again, managing the contract creation, execution, and analysis of maximizing operation and financial performance and minimizing the risk. And what is the foundation? Need flexibility. This is what I said in the beginning itself. In the contract management, what is required is you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be flexible. Willingness to adopt terms and conditions to reflect change. Wherever there are deviations, or there are things which are outside the scope of the contract. Now, especially, we all remember the pandemic situation we have all gone through. Has anybody ever thought about it? Has anybody incorporated such things? Now, just for information, we are in the olden times, we always used to put it under force majeure. Now, in modern times, the new rule is force majeure has to be defined according to each one, because things have happened in different parts of the world in different ways. So it's obligatory for a vendor to specify, or a customer to specify the terms and conditions of the force majeure the way he perceives. Clarity of contract, contribution to strategic objectives. See, now I don't want to talk about this one now because it's coming up in the second part of it. It's very essential that for an organization, before they venture on to starting any project and subsequently a contract management, the organization has to really understand what are they trying to get. And this is what comes under the business case, what we saw in the procurement cycle. A business case has to be made for the benefit of the management. The senior management or the top management has to be convinced. What is the need for this particular project? Do we have the funds for it? Is it of what strategic importance is the project at this moment of time? So all these questions have to be answered. So there has to be a lot of clarity, in coming up with a business proposal which has to be acceptable to the chairman of the company or to the CEO. Understanding providers, business objectives and drivers. See, this is again business objectives and drivers. See, the drivers is something which we have to understand. What is it that drives the business? You got to understand where is your business at the moment? What is the level of maturity of your organization? Are you on a maturity level, or have you reached the peak? Okay, so all these have to be analyzed properly, and this is where the management tools can be of use. Okay, everybody talks about the SWOT analysis. Okay, there are so many other tools also which has to be looked into and see what is the level in which the organization now and where do you want to go. Okay, this is where strategy comes in. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And how do you go there? So these are all questions which the organization has to answer, and especially people who are coming up with new projects. Recognition of the provider's need to make a profit. See, this is a business reality. Okay, there is no point of squeezing down your customer, okay, until he suffocates. We are both in the business to make money. Okay, so the contractor has to make a reasonable profit in order to sustain his own business. Okay, so it's a mutual recognition that both have to understand the need for each other. The right team with the right skills. Okay, now in the management, I'm sure everybody talks about the team concept. Okay, more than 75 to 80% of the Fortune 500 companies are all working through the teams. The team concept has become very popular around the world. And this is what I would suggest to the participants here. I know there are quite a number of students, a few students and budding executives. Okay, you have to be flexible. You have to be adaptable. Okay, and you have to become multi-skilled. You've got to get more and more skills under your armory, and that is what the demands of the market is. The right team with the right skills. The ability of the buyer and the provider managers to manage upwards in their own organization. Okay, so this is the last one. Okay, it's a part and parcel of your own succession planning as to who is to do what and who is going to be there or what period of time. What is contract management? Each separate element of the contract management process must be proactively managed for you to have overall contract deemed a success. Okay, we have seen already the various processes involved in the contract management. Now each one has to be managed properly. Okay, if a contract has to be successful, each and every component in the contract management has to be a success. Service delivery management. Are you providing at the right time, at the right place? So now here comes the logistics concept here. Okay, what is logistics? It is nothing but the ability to get the product to the right place at the right time at the right cost. Okay, now during COVID's time, the right cost was being nullified. You wanted the product at the right place at the right time. Cost was immaterial. Okay, then relationship management. Right, and then comes the contract administration. Okay, since we already discussed the contract management process, I'm not getting into it. Right, so let's come to the last part, objectives of the contract management. Documented evidence of good performance is provided to assist in evidencing the achievement of value for money. See, the value for money, that is the most, okay? And when you talk about the value for money, there are so many other concepts in it, okay? I think people with economics people will talk much more about it, okay? And I'm sure I do understand that the Dean ASBM is an economist, okay? So I'm not competent enough to talk about the value for money more in detail, okay? the value for money and the benefit of realization, and the documented evidence of poor and unsatisfactory performance. Now, provided in what? To facilitate improvement and build upon performance history. In exceptional cases, to permit early recourse to the department's right under the default provisions. Okay, so the objective of contract management is to provide value for money, and whatever is mentioned in the contract, whether it is achieved for the public welfare and for the sustainability as well. Okay, so with this, I've concluded the first part. If there is any questions, please do, you're free to ask, okay, before we move to the second part. This was just a general talk, okay, only just an overview of what is contract development. We have a very interesting session now to start. Right, so please, any questions, please feel to ask now, or I will assume I can start the second session. Okay, let me, right, do I have your permission to start the second session? I can't hear the participants. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right. So we are moving on to experiential learning lessons. Okay. And this is, like what I said, is going to be an interesting session. And I do have as panelist and industry expert, colleague of ours called Shyam Ramamurthy. He's our Vice President for Spatial Projects. Shyam has got 37 years of industry experience in various diversified portfolio. Okay, so he's the right man from the industry who can really, we can discuss on that. Okay, so I invite Ram as well. Right, so let's see what the contents are. So what we are going to see here is, okay, to start with, which is not mentioned here, we will be talking about the tender. Okay, what is tender, tendering, and what are the principles of tendering? Okay, and then we will move on to how can you make RFQ? Okay, relevance of error-free preparation for RFP. So if you have the right tender charter, what we're going to explain very soon, then you can make the RFQ in a much better way. So we will be talking about an overview of contract development, and then what are the items in the contract development charter, and what are the additional supporting documents, and what are the characteristics of tender documents. And okay, now in the second part, how to write a request for proposal or request for quotation. Then what is request for proposal? What are the steps involved in request for proposal preparation? What are the steps involved? Do you do your homework, distinguish between needs and wants, and decide what the winner would look like? Organize the document, introduction, requirements and selection criteria, timeliness and processes. Right. Can I invite Ram also? Ram, are you there? I'm sorry, Shyam, are you there?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, Professor. I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. And can everybody see me also? That would be much better, though not worth really looking at, but still, Thank you very much. And I am really honored to be a part of this session conducted by Professor Matthew for ASBM. Like Professor made in his introductory speech, I have 34 years of work experience, and the subsequent 4 years, that rounds it up to 38. I have been pursuing my passion, which is purely on supply chain and logistics, trying my best to give back to the society at large whatever I have learned in those 34 years, where I have dabbled mainly in supply chain and logistics, but to some degree of extent even in project management. And it is in this project management that I also came across the RFP, the RFQ, the CDC. I mean, these are all acronyms that we talk of, but what Professor Matthews just explained to all of you. I have worked over diverse industries, like Professor said, in an FMCG company for almost 7 years, in an tire industry, in 2 tire industries for almost 16 years, and in a building material or a cement factory for 10 years. So across the cross section of industries, one thing that stands in common are the principles and the processes that one end up adopting. So if the, like one rightly puts it, if the foundation is strong, then you have the tailwind behind you to carry you forward to reach your goal. So that's the long and short of me, and I'll now leave it to the professor as well as the other participants who are there to keep asking me questions also as we go along, which between the professor and I would attempt to answer or will answer, so that it becomes a very engaging session.
Thank you, Shyam.
Thanks, Professor. My pleasure.
Right, so let's try to understand what is contract development chart. Let me put the whole thing because Shyam is also with me. Now, Shyam, I have a question for you. Since you have been working in India, did you ever come across contracts development charter at all?
In the 34 odd years that I worked, Professor, to be very, very honest, I never came across the term like they say, of a contract development charter, either knowingly or unknowingly. But I have to admit very frankly that the components of the contract development charter, which you will come across, which we will come through quickly, have been used. So, which is what prompts me to say either knowingly or unknowingly, bits and pieces, parts of the charter have been used in developing the entire contract development charter. And that is how subsequently in my later years, I realized that there is something called a contract development charter, which encompasses all these 10 or 11 individual sections that one talks about, which are inherent to this charter. So to answer your question, no, but again to add a footnote to it, knowingly or unknowingly, parts or bits and pieces of them have been used by me also in my project management work.
No, thank you. Well, I do understand that things have not been that organized like in Western countries. Okay, as we go along, you will see the importance of contracts development charter. Okay, now what I would like to emphasize here is there are certain principles which we are going to see. Okay, very soon. I will talk about it as we go along. So let's move more to the contracts development charter. Okay, to visualize in your mind, it's a summation of quite a number of topics, okay, which the organization should take care of. Okay, now we talked about the project management, which is being carried out. Now these project engineers go through during the lifetime of the project, they do come across various events, okay, which should be logged. Okay, now in project management, there is a logging, but at the same time, at the end of the contract, it has to be put in black and white as to what are the challenges they faced, how did they come across, okay, and such things will become part and parcel of the SOP for the future. Okay, so the development charter, as we go along, what we're going to see now, has got a lot of importance which people have not really understood. So my request to all our participants is that, okay, you got to understand what is contract development charter. Please feel to ask questions if you don't understand. Okay, it's nothing very important, but it's a data management. It's a part of the knowledge management system wherein data is accumulated like a repository. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, Professor, if I were to add on also, in fact, I echo what you say really. A contract charter, which I subsequently stumbled upon, discovered on, typically, if I were to put it, is the knowledge management or the heart and soul, typically, of anything to do with a contract or a project. And in the process of an organization, because what constitutes this knowledge bank is the data that comes from the various sections that you have just now told. So some of these data points could be contract development management, contract closeout reports, you have the costs and pricing, you have fund management, you have scheduling, etc., etc. So, like you rightly say, a person who manages a contract, or if we were to call him a project manager, he or she would necessarily have to, in the life cycle of that entire project, keep a log sheet. It could be daily or it could be weekly of all the activities that needed to be done, that were done. Some of them could not be done, the reasons why they could not be done. Some of them were done with challenges. What were the challenges? How did they overcome them? So this is an example of the data or the repository that you just now spoke about that is crucial for an organization to have so that they can keep reposing their faith, or they can keep that in the bank to make sure that the next project or the next contract that they do is far smoother and much more efficient. Yeah.
Thank you, Shyam. Now let's move to another topic. We will come back to contract development because it's so important. Now, before we move any further, you got to understand the very principles of tendering. See, that's something very important. Okay. What are the principles of tendering? Okay. We all take tendering very lightly. Okay. But you got to understand that within the principles of tender, okay, there are several guiding principles are there. Okay. Now, before we get into the tendering principles, I would like to say, in a court of law, if there is a dispute, okay, on a tender or on a contract, what will be the judge looking at? The judge would be looking at three very important issues. Number one, is the due process carried out? Number two, is procedural justice adhered to? And number three is fairness. Okay, now you can say these three are the paramount clauses over which the tendering principles are also built. Okay, now the first one is equality and equal treatment. Now, when you prepare a tender document, you should not have any prejudice for any organization or any nationality or any country for that matter from your past experience. Okay, your past experience, you can take it into consideration while you're evaluating, but when you are making a tender, you should be absolutely, there has to be fairness in whatever you're saying. Each applicant should be given as much consideration as the others in a fair process. Okay, so this is called the fairness, right? Then comes non-discrimination. Each application should not be discriminated against due to such factors as the country of origin or nationality. Okay, this is not permitted at all. There should be non-discrimination because this is again, you're going against the principles. Okay, now comes the mutual recognition. Now, the mutual recognition, especially in a European country, ever since the European Union has been formed, okay, whatever is done in one particular country, okay, they have to respect the other members which are in the European community, okay, and it should be acceptable and okay by all the members of the European country. That is what it means. Okay, then fourth one, proportionality. Okay, just because you happen to be tendering or okay for a particular company, that does not mean okay that you can put all kinds of unwanted responsibility on a vendor. Okay, the demands placed on the suppliers should be both relevant and directly related to the contract being awarded. Okay, just think about when you're buying a new car. Okay, the car manufacturers provide a warranty, which is normally for 3 years. Okay, and you may get it extended by the service providers of the car dealers. The car dealers may provide you additional 2 years warranty. Okay, because for them it's an additional money-making proposition. But the manufacturer has provided a 3 years. Okay, now nobody can say you have to give us warranty for the lifetime of the car. Okay, so that is called proportionality. Then there is transparency. Okay, now when you make a tender, the tender details should be publicized everywhere. Okay, so now in order to, what people do is to make it on the website, put it on the website so that everybody can see it. Okay, so in olden times, I still remember in places like Saudi Arabia and all that, it was mandatory. Okay, even a ship's arrival notice, okay, had to be put in the newspapers in Arabic. Okay, so that is what transparency is. Now, yes, now, okay, I'm passing on to our friend Shyam. Now let's look at what contract charter we have been talking about. What are the items which are involved? Okay, so let me put the whole thing and then we can talk. Contract administration and management, contract closeout procedures, contract development, contract and delivery order development, scheduling, cost and pricing analysis, funding and milestone tracking, contract performance monitoring, quality assurance, fee administration, framework for monitoring specialized personnel procurement process. Now, before I move on to Shyam, let's try to hear something from the participants. Now, are you able to visualize what contract charter is all about? We have not explained it, okay? I'm just holding my explanation, just to understand, just to get the feel that we are on the right track. Can we hear someone from the participants, please? Are you able to understand what contract charter we are talking about? And do you feel it's important? I see that there are 7 people from Tata Steel. Are you all from Jamshedpur or are you located in different parts of India? Hello, Tata Steel. Where are they? Where are the participants? Okay, please speak up. We need interaction. Without interaction, these are not subjects which can be, it's going to be a monologue.
It's going to be that much more engaging, fruitful, and beneficial, not only to you, but even to us. Yeah, if we have a discussion or a free-flowing discussion moving across when we speak. So questions are welcome, like Professor said, at any point in time. You could either raise your hands or you could interrupt straight away and we would take them. But do ask some questions or do make your comments also so that we know or we are able to feel your presence.
Sir, I am Ram Mohan from Hyderabad.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a little doubt in the sense of whenever a person takes such a career as contractor, it's not a career, entrepreneurship as a contractor, how he will come to know whether he will be ending up in profit in the contract or loss or break even? Is it by mere sheer trial and error, or there is any well laid down guidelines either in the textual form or in an institution form? I think my doubt is clear to you.
Thank you. Your question is clear.
Speak out something on this, sir?
Shyam, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah, your question is very clear. Just to repeat, you are asking, as a contractor, how would he or she or they be in a position to find out whether they would make a profit, make a loss, or break even at the end of the contract?
Yes, they are in their 20s. They are first-time contractors. What is the guidance and what are the, instructions to them?
As a first-time contractor, a contractor is a vendor or a supplier of certain product or service to, let's say, an organization. It could be small, medium, or large. And the contractor either manufactures or provides the service on their own, or is somebody who acts as a via media from the manufacturer to the buyer, right? These are the various possibilities that exist for the contractor. Now, for the contractor to be able to, first and foremost, they need to be qualified to provide that service or the product. 1. 2, having got themselves qualified for the service or the product, they themselves would need to figure out what is the cost or the price in the market for such a product or a service if it were to be delivered to an organization or a buyer. Depending on the size of the organization of the contractor then chooses to bid or quote against the request for quote. We'll talk about that later, or the request for quote that the organization asks, so that it keeps them in a position where they are able to talk to the people in the organization. Now, when they have quoted, obviously they will not quote, or in common terms you say undercut and quote below cost, because the minute you do that, you know you're going to go out of pocket. So there are two ways that you end up doing. Either it is complete break even, in which case you do not get any single pie in your pocket, or you keep I'm saying healthy, but whatever margins that your organization requires for you to provide that service or the product to the organization or the buyer. So once, because any bid, unless and until it is a government contract where typically they end up going for the lowest bidder, in typical organizations, just a bid or a request for quote doesn't stop at that. They invite, based on the L1s and the L2s and the L3s, which are on costs. They even look at other service parameters, like are you meeting all the quality specifications, or how soon, the timeliness of delivery, will you be in a position to give. So basically there are a slew of deliverables also put forward by the buyer, which if you end up qualifying, they would call you for a second round of negotiation, which would lead into then subsequently the raising of a purchase order, right? So to answer your question, you would be straight out of pocket or make a loss if you underquote. You know that a product costs 100. There is nobody in the manufacturing arena who would quote lower than 100. And if you end up quoting lower than 100, you are sure to make a loss straight away. 2, you quote 100 and go back to the buyer, who invites you for a discussion or a negotiation, in which either you stay at 100 itself and therefore you break even completely, because everybody else may have quoted more than 100. 3, you quote more than 100. And if you're quoting, let's say, with a 10% markup, and there are people who have quoted with a 7% markup, but the other parameters that the buyer is looking for in terms of delivery schedules, in terms of meeting of all qualities specifications, if everything is met, they may come back and ask what is the best price that you can offer. If you are in a position to say beat down from 10% markup to 5% markup, and your competition does not lower below the 7%, you are assured of that 5% profit that you can take. Now it is for you as a contractor to decide whether that 5% is sufficient to take care of all your administrative costs, because you have ended up quoting, you're ended up spending time, you're going to end up spending more money in getting the product from your location to the buyer's location. Did that clarify a bit, Mr. Rajmohan?
Yeah, sir. One more thing, just to add on for this thing, there is something like pre-qualification tender that you were almost telling that he has to be pre-qualified, that entrepreneur. Other point is that in the initial years when a person enters into a contracting profession, I think the experience comes out through trial and error. This is my one more observation on it, sir. And can you kindly explain about something like this viability gap funding, where that fit viability gap funding?
Professor, would you like to take that?
Yes, thank you. Okay, to give you an answer academically, okay, since you have asked very pertinent question and I can see a lot of potential in you by very question you have raised, okay. Can I give you an answer academically? Number one, I would suggest earnestly that you should pursue project management. Number one, okay, because whatever the question what you're asking, you will learn much more if you start learning project management. That is number one. Number two, there is a concept which is very much, it's a little on the higher side. It's called the earned value management. Earned value management. This is a concept which is internationally now being applied, especially in the US Army and all that, for any contract for that matter, okay, along with the milestone of the completion of the project, okay, the amount of money what has been spent on the project also has to be declared. Okay, this is the sum and substance of the earned value management contract. Now, these are all new things which are coming up in the arena. Okay, so to answer your question, I forget the question again. Shyam,
viability gap funding.
Pardon me?
Viability gap funding.
Right. See, that is entirely a different section altogether. Okay. Now, when it comes to the viability, see, for example, where are you going to? The first question which should come into your mind is where are you going to get the the funding from? Let's say it is from the bank. Now, from the bank, if you have to get funding for a new project, okay, which you are going to start from scratch, they will see. They want to see a project report, a detailed project report. Got it? So when you make a detailed project report, you will be definitely contacting financial experts in this field. Got it? So you will get into nitty-gritty things as to how the project can be made viable. Got it? So you may have, your questions are very valid. Okay. Like what I said, I'm just repeating once again. This shows the potential in you. Okay. Please pursue it and supplement with a course like, project management. A lot of things will be clear and you will be, fully confident of taking any new project. Have I given you an answer?
Okay, sir. Thank you. Okay.
Right. Anybody else? Right. Okay. Now, since there is no another answer, can we move a little more on the contract chapter? Just a final closing on the contract charter. Now, see what you have to, like what Shyam has just explained, you can see in the contract there are so many items are shown under the contract chart. Now, if you look at it, it's a repository. Now, each subject, okay, contract administration and management itself is a topic. Now, in that topic, there will be so many subsections to it. Okay, so what is required for an organization is they should, okay, I'm repeating whatever we have said before, and the organization should create their own knowledge management repository for each topic, okay, from the experience what they have undergone, okay, and they should bring in enough and more items under each one So whenever there is a requirement for a particular tender, for example, it's concerning quality assurance. Yes, open up the quality assurance and read what has happened in the past. Okay, how did things happen? What did things go wrong? How was it corrected? Okay, all these things you can get it from the repository. Okay, are these things clear in your mind? Now, the need for having a proper contract charter. Okay.
Professor Matthew, if you could just stay on that slide, I would just want to reiterate to all the participants about these 11 data points. I think there are 11 data points that are there in this entire knowledge center, which is called the contract charter. So while Professor Matthew talked about the contract administration and management, which talks globally about how does one administer a contract. A contract could be for an equipment which is bought out, like a motor or a pump or something, or a contract could be for a fabrication. A contract could be for a continuous and steady flow of building materials, which include steel, cement, etc. Or the contract could be globally for building up a manufacturing facility ground up, let's say. So depending on the types of contracts that you are working on, the administration and the management of the contract differs, so that both the buyer, Professor Matthew talked about equality, both the buyer as well as the contractor's interests are protected. There is no undue advantage taken by one over the other. And if there are certain clauses put, these are put only with the express acknowledgement of both the parties. Okay. When you talk of the closeout procedures, once a purchase is done, once a fabrication is made and installed, once the entire, let's say, a factory is built, there is a sign off that happens that says that the entire activity is completed. So that it's in itself is a big checklist where, because these are 11 blocks, and each one of these blocks would have subsections where you go about preparing a task sheet and check each one of them. There could be some that may have been missed out, which needs to be done or revisited, which is why we say the contract charter in its entirety is extremely essential.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you come across your cost pricing, funding. I mean, these are all like, where do you get the funds from? How do you track the funds? What is the milestone? What is the equipment status, etc., etc. Yeah, thanks, Professor.
In simple terms, this is a foolproof method of working. Okay, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It should be already in an organization. So whenever there is a need, you open up, have discussions with the concerned people, and then come up with the tender part. Okay, right. These are the documents for contracting. We will just move a little faster in order to save time. Now, when it comes to contract, there are quite a number of documents which are required. Now, because of technology and data management, all this can be carried out through the help of software. Okay, and it should be archived as well. Okay, these are the characteristics of tender documents. Okay, I'm just moving a little bit, talking about the software only. Okay, so supporting staff. Okay, so who are the people involved in the project? All the documents, everything what is prepared should be archived. Right, now we are moving on to a very interesting section called how to write request for proposal or request for quotation. Okay. RFP is not very important. Okay. Request for more information about business solution. Now let us try to understand what is RFP and what is RFQ. Okay. Now, Ram, in simple terms, what do you feel? How can you make the participants understand? What is the difference? What is the main difference between RFP and RFQ? The main difference.
I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Let's say in a sentence or two. A request for quote or an RFQ, it mainly focuses on pricing and cost issues. And it is used mainly for either bought out items, simple services, commodities that are basically straightforward and uncomplicated, where there is no room or there is practically no room or leeway for any, to make your specification tailored or something like that. So it is like I want to buy a motor which is 5 kilowatt hour or 50 kilowatt hour. So I go out into the marketplace. I go out into the marketplace and I have companies like Siemens, Bharat Bijli or Grundfos or somebody else. There are 7 or 8 companies, each one of them giving their quotes because the specification is pretty straightforward. It's a 50 kilowatt hour motor with some other attributes that are there. That's about it. And once that comes, then you start looking at the cost, 2, what is the lead time to deliver. That's about it. It's an open and shut case, if I can call it that way.
So just for information for the participants, we are not going to talk here more about RFQ because it's straightforward like Shyam has just mentioned. So our emphasis is going to be on RFP, request for proposal. Okay.
That's
now an organization, okay, wants to, let's imagine an organization wants to buy something, a machinery. Okay. So they have done their homework and they want a particular type of machinery. So they have gathered their specifications, what they want, and that is what they are trying to give it to the vendor overseas or wherever he is. Okay, so let's move. Now, before we start making about the RFP in the preparation, we have to understand a few things. Okay, we have to understand the difference between needs and wants. Do you think everything you need it or do you want it? Okay, that is what you have to understand. This is the starting point. Okay, now there is an example what is given here. An organization wants to transmit pictures between headquarters and the vans at the job site. Okay, let's take a typical case. Okay, so you have to specify the number of images per second, the maximum speed of image, and the resolution needed. Okay, this is the requirement. This is a typical case study. Okay, now in order to do that, okay, do you want to mention about color? How will you? Okay, color has come in. Is it a need or a want? Is it a need or a want? What is a need? Okay, so if you look at the case history, case study, okay, then to specify the number of images per second, the maximum speed of the image, and the resolution needed, okay, these 3 components are absolutely essential. They can be classified as needs. Okay, and the images in color can be classified as wants. Okay, let's move a little more into it. Okay, please understand this. What we are trying to do is we are trying to prepare the RFP. Okay, so in that you have to learn what are the essential things you have to mention in the RFP. whether it's the needs or the wants. Okay, so you have to, again, when you want something, when it is a want, okay, you have to use certain terminology in the RFP. Okay, like will, shall, and must. See, these are very emphatic, and these are the requirements which you have to build in the RFP. Okay, because it's a need. On the contrary, the words like, okay, may, can, and optional. See, these are words which are wants because they are not essential part. Okay, you may or you can, and you can, it's an optional. Shyam, you want to add on to anything?
Yeah, it's actually pretty straightforward if you look at the semantics. If you roll it within yourself, for me to deliver 100 images per second from my headquarters to the vans that are across 5 geographical locations with a pixel orientation of, let's say, 1200, I need to have, I should have, I must have. So that becomes a criteria when you write in your RFP. Whereas if you write the same thing and say for delivering 100 images per second from my headquarters to the 10 geographical locations, I may want to have color photographs instead of black and white photographs. So the emphasis therefore shifts on what is a must-have, on which the RFP is therefore built, and on which the vendor or the contractor puts more emphasis rather than on the color or black and white if they were to concentrate or focus on that. So one needs to be extremely clear on what exactly is it that you require. So another example that I can take, moving away from what Professor Matthews shown, is in a shampoo facility where I was involved as a buyer, a contract, not a contract buyer, but a buyer in the organization. It required the FDA regulated vessels of 100 kiloliters. So the specification was very clearly set, and we said FDA regulated dairy product regulated vessels so that bacteria does not grow in it. So there were quotations that came in for SS316 also. In addition to some vendors who quoted for SS316L, which is the dairy grade stainless steel 316 product. So immediately one could move away from the must have and select those 2 or 3 potential contractors with whom the buyer could engage versus the other 4 or 5 who did not qualify for it. So once a specification is made very clear, like in this instance, the pixels, the images per second, and the distribution across a geographic area versus a want or a need, not a must-have, of a color versus a black and white. And in the second example of an FDA dairy product stainless steel fabricator versus just any other stainless steel fabricator. So once this clarity emerges in whatever you want as a buying organization or as a buyer in your contract, it becomes extremely clear to see what exactly you should take forward and what you should let go of.
Thank you, Shyam. Right, now let's move to the RFP preparation. Okay, how do we do it? What is the essential requirement? Okay, now look at this. Who is going to be the winner? Okay, now here you've got to understand what is the requirement of your own company. Why are you buying this particular item? What is the need? Okay, do you want to be the lowest, the cheapest one which is available in the market, or you want the fastest one which is available in the market, or a combination of this? Okay, now here comes, I was talking in the contract earlier in the overview of the contract development. Okay, and it's essential for an organization to think, why are we buying a certain item? If it has to be approved by the chairman of the company, or let's say it's an expensive item you're trying to procure, it has to be approved by the chairman. Now, if the chairman has to approve it, okay, there has to be valid reasons why it is required. And what is the objective? Okay, what is the strategic benefit the organization is going to achieve from it? Okay, so keep that in mind when you prepare the RFP, especially if it's an expensive item.
Exactly.
Right.
Just to interrupt, I'm so sorry, sir. One needs to be extremely clear on what the goals of your organization are. What is your corporate strategy in having something that you want to have? So when an organization decides to buy a product or a service, it needs to strategically look ahead to see whether it wants to work only on cost as a parameter, whether it wants to work only on speed or efficiency as a parameter, whether it wants to work, let's say, another attribute I can think of is purely quality, or whether it wants to have these three attributes and any other attributes so that they have a mix and match of all. It could also be that the organization strategically wants to be the first mover in the market and therefore wants to see that speed is the #1 criteria for them, so that they have the product, they know that the competition is also trying to do that, they get it in place first, they manufacture and roll it out into the marketplace. So there are quite a few keys that one can play around with to see what is it that you want at that point in time to have the desired effect.
Thank you, Shyam. Right, moving on. Let's organize the document. Okay, now, okay, just visualize in your mind that you are going to start preparing the RFP. How do you prepare? How do you start? From where do you start? Okay, you must think about your own organization. What is the best way to start? Okay, so we have to cover in the RFP an introduction. What is the need for buying it? Okay, what is the selection criteria, timeliness, process? All these things have to be incorporated in the RFP. Okay, we will see examples very soon, then you will understand better. Okay, so there will be so many subsections in this. Okay, now can we move a little faster? Shyam, okay, can I move on?
Sure, yes sir, yes sir.
Right, now let's look at the introduction part. Okay, #1 is, what is it that you hope to achieve by buying this expensive item? What is your objective? Like Shyam has just rightly said, do you want to be the first mover advantage? Okay, so in the introduction, you have to give the key points from the other sections, including due date. Okay, then when you want it. See, for example, coming up with the previous example, what we were talking about, and Shyam was explaining more. Okay, look at how an introduction has been written. XYZ company requests proposals for a highly reliable easy to use system capable of transmitting images from the main office to WAN anywhere in the metropolitan area. See, how do you like it? See, from the participants, what do you feel? Why should be an introduction? What is the need for having a proper introduction? What is the need for having a proper introduction? Anybody?
Come on, it's not that difficult.
Sir, introduction is the first step. So that has to be there.
What is the purpose of it? Okay, why should we give a proper, impressive introduction? Let's put it that way. What do you think? Is there any underlying benefits out of it?
I think definitely there are benefits.
Very good. Okay. So are we trying to impress the vendor?
Definitely impress, influence, demonstrate.
That we are a company of substance. We have the potential, correct? Okay. Can we go to the next slide? Then you will understand. See, look at this part. Now you can tell me a little more better. Okay, look at the second point. What is the need for the second point? Shyam, you want to elaborate on the second point?
Sure, I'll just give it a 30-second pause, sir. Because I'm expecting, I know that people know it. There are no wrong answers, please.
Please, go ahead.
Go ahead and venture a guess.
Participants who have not talked, we should always participate. It's for you to learn. This is the one way of learning. Nimisha, are you there? Nimisha from Jain University, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
come on now. We have not heard anything from you.
So coming to the second point, I think it's important for them to understand, what you are as a business. It'll give them a better idea of who you are. So it'll be easier for them to make decisions with you.
Okay.
Sustainable.
Little more
Yes.
deeper. Go a little more deeper
Like,
into it.
go down one more level, Nimisha, and I'm sure you will crack the puzzle.
Little more deeper. This will help your prospective vendors to understand what business needs you are trying to fill with vendor selection process. Okay. Shyam, you want to add up?
Yeah,
What
see,
you are planning to say?
what would happen when you elaborate and tell the vendor, set a preamble and tell the vendor what is it that you are, who is it that you are, what is it that you want to do, and what is it that you require. You may have on the other side a contractor or a vendor who understand then where you are coming from and are also hopefully able to make an alternate decision for you and share with you that if you were to use let's say a product A versus a product B, the efficiencies may be much more, the wastages may be much lower, the final product that comes out may meet 99.9% specification that you need as opposed to whatever you have laid out in your RFP. So it gives an opportunity for the vendor who knows their business the best to also come up with an alternate, which as a prospective buyer, you may or may not take, but then you are on a footing where you can engage in a meaningful conversation with the vendor, then to take it forward to say, okay, if I go ahead with that, how does it affect my cost? How does it affect my time schedule, etc., etc., etc. But the biggest advantage in this is that the vendor now knows what you're looking for and is able to even provide you with alternates. With alternates that could be better, could give you the value for money that we talked of also earlier.
Thank you, Sean. Right, let's look at the highlighting requirements in RFQ preparation. Okay, now I want you to understand, okay, now we have been talking about the transmission from the head office. Okay, taking that as an example, okay, three things are mentioned here. The image size and quality transmission, which could include both desired speed and any requirements that the transmission be secure. Desired options, where you might list color as a desirable option. Okay, now just want you to understand, just tell us, are you able to visualize how important it is for the RFQ preparation? How specific you have to be? Now, you may think in your mind, who the hell is going to prepare all this? Why should we take so much of trouble? If you take so much of trouble in making the request for proposal precise, okay, and concise, you will stand to benefit in the contract. Okay, right, can we move on? Time is running out. Right, detailed specifications. Now comes the interesting part. Okay, so we are not talking about RFQ, which we have already talked about. Okay, now look at this. In the RFP, we are including certain more specifications. Okay, what do you think, okay, is the requirement? What are the benefits of it? And is there anything more you can relate to these additional specifications which are required? Is the question clear to the participants? Okay, these are all quality measures. What are we trying to do? We are trying to make the RFP as specific, as precise, okay, so that the deliverables are all well established as per international standards. Now, if nobody has got any questions, I have a question for you. Okay, what is the need? I'm repeating my question once again in a different format. What is the need for specifying these criteria? Okay, is there any linkages here? I'm just giving you a clue as well.
That's a major hint that you have given, Professor.
Yes, since nobody's talking. Okay, is there any linkage? If you give the linkage, we can close the session right away. Come on, think. Right, come on. There are so many executives, working executives here.
Bright young minds. Why exactly does one need to give detailed specs?
So only the ones that are capable of meeting all these specifications can think of working with you.
Good. Good.
So you save time and costs by, filtering them out in the beginning itself.
Right. That's a very good attempt. Can you think of something else? Sorry, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
To avoid a piecemeal queries at a later point of time, in the initial stage, everything should be comprehensive, complete, transparent, and whatnot.
Very good. That's also there. So these two put together answer the question well. There is something else also that I think we are looking at.
What is it? Where does it satisfy our criteria?
See, it was partly answered by Nimisha. Did you answer in the beginning? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. It got partly answered and partly answered by Mr. Ram Mohan also. Yeah.
Anybody else? Before we give you the final answer.
See, it is not that what you have said is incorrect. What you have said is also perfectly right. It's perfectly right. You would, from the hundreds of potential contractors, you would come down to 10 or 15 who would be able to meet. So that is time saved for the organization. Yeah. And also so that you do not, you do your homework well, which is what Professor Matthew said right in the beginning, so that you list everything down and don't go back these 5 now and then, oh, I forgot, there are 3 more things that you need to quote for. Like that, you end up losing time.
See, look at software functionality. Okay, look at software functionality. Okay, engineering tolerance. Okay, technical and business. Okay, that's different. Okay, let's just take the 2 parts, software functionality. Okay, engineering tolerance. Which category does this belong to? And is there anything which you can link it with?
Sir, I would like to just add one point that for anything, there is a checklist, CL, right. I put in short. Correct. And there is a second check, SC, from a different person, or team, other than the one who has prepared the checklist. So that put together, it is totally concrete. Nothing is left out that we ensure. So this I just want to.
Very good. You talked about the checklist. Okay, correct. Where did we talk about the checklist initially? Let's go back. You are on the right track. You are on the right track. We talked about the checklist in the beginning. And where was that? Use the right word. Use the right terminology. Is my question clear?
It all began with Professor Matthew saying that we have this 6 days session of X, Y, Z that we would be going through. And today's topic started with that. So what we aim to do, or what Mr. Professor Matthew is asking, is use the terminology so that it remains ingrained in your minds.
Please write down as well. Write down. Writing down is very important. If you write down, you will never forget. Okay, coming back to your checklist. Okay, we talked about the checklist. In what context? And that's the answer. We talked the checklist in reference to contract charter. Are you able to put 2 and 2 together now? For example, like software functionality. Okay, engineering tolerance. Don't you think they are part and parcel of the quality assurance, which comes in the in the contract charter? Yes or no? Are you able to visualize it?
Okay, let me ask it in another way, Professor Matthew. So you have given detailed, you're familiar with P&I diagrams, civil diagrams that are there. You're given detailed diagrams. You're given tolerances in the fabrications that you make or in the procurement of bought out items that you do. You are given software functionalities in the, let's say, the PLCs or the chips that you buy. And you are given hardware requirements also. Now, all these, if you put together, I'm taking just these 4 attributes right now and not the others. What does it point you towards? Are these, when you say tolerances, it is like plus or minus 0.05. So basically what we are looking at or what we are trying to do is to put a square jacket around the entire parameter or attribute that we give so that there is no room for ambiguity at all. Anybody who gives the quote when we make this RFP, if they move out of the tolerance, it is considered a disqualifier because it has been given by the buying organization that it has to meet this specific tolerance. Does that make sense now? Nimisha in the beginning said that yes, it will sift from my 50 or 100 odd contractors who quote to 10. Yes, all that happens, but it happens by not by a process of elimination, but by being absolutely rigid on the tolerances that you give, the drawings that you specify, the functionalities that you give, or the requirements in hardware that you end up sharing. Because there would be other vendors who may not quote at all because they know that their product does not meet one or all of these specifications. So to the vendor also, it is a document that is very clear. Please quote if you meet these. That is what the buying organization is in fact telling the vendor.
Thank you, Shyam. Okay, let's move on. Right, these are documentation submissions requirements in the RFP. Must clearly specify the format the vendors are. Okay, normally what is happening is okay, a template is given for the participants to fill it. If it is not clearly defined, responses will be sent that there are different formats and it would be impossible to. Okay, so templates are given, so the participants have to fill the formats. Okay, the response format should be identify what is required from the vendor in each section, such as references, resumes of potential team members, documents with vendors, understanding of the requirements and form. Okay, so if a vendor is not responding to according to what is the format which is given, okay, it will not be considered. Okay, now let us look at the assumptions and constraints in the RFP. Okay, what is the point of making your own assumptions? Okay, whatever assumptions you are making when you're making an RFP or when you're giving a quotation, it should be specified. This is the international norm. Okay, there is no point of telling it later on. It should be specified in the beginning itself. Okay, now can you give an example of a constraint? We just went through it. Okay, we went through the pandemic. Okay, the COVID pandemic, it's a constraint. Whatever you had, whatever was envisaged, were you able to complete it? So it was a constraint. It was like a force measure. Okay. Now, okay, let's look at the assumptions. Okay, that the prospective vendors need to be made aware. Okay. Now it's essential that in the tender documents itself, okay, you can stipulate this clause. Whatever assumptions are made by the vendor and whatever constraints they feel should be incorporated in the quotation itself. Okay. Now, what does this mean from our paramount clause? Can you link it with the paramount clause we talked about when you make the tender? What is the paramount clause we talked about in the beginning itself when you make the tender? Okay, we talked about procedural justice, due process, and then fairness. Okay, can you link any of these things? Okay, just to repeat what I had said earlier, please understand these three are vital. Okay, they are called the paramount clauses. Okay, so whenever you make the tender, okay, whenever you float the RFP, okay, or the RFQ, these considerations should be there. Is it fair? Okay, is procedural justice being adopted? Have they advertised in the website or in the newspaper, depending on the country where they are operating from? Okay, so failure to be forthright or upfront with the vendor will open the door to renegotiation of the argument at a later date and runs the possibility of straining the relationship with the vendor. Okay, so now there is another issue which we talk more about in the purchasing part. Sorry, I should not use the word purchasing. I should use the word procurement. Okay. Procurement. Is there any difference between the two, purchasing and procurement? Okay. Purchasing is what you do when you go to a supermarket. When you get into a supermarket, you buy something and you just get out. Okay. It's just a transactional relationship only. But procurement is a process. Okay. So we always talk about procurement, but unfortunately people still use the word purchasing. Okay, right. Now, the point what I was trying to say is that when you're dealing with suppliers from, especially from European countries, they have a feeling of upper hand. Okay, they would not give all the relevant details. They would say, they would just put one word and say, boiler terms. We will be talking about it as we go along during the next few days. Boiler terms. Okay, it's a misleading terms. Okay, what it means in simple language, it is okay, errors and omissions. Okay, now what is required is, my suggestion to everybody, since we are talking about contracts, since you are also involved, I'm sure some of you are involved in purchasing as well. Never accept anything from any contractor, any supplier, where he says hidden costs. Hidden costs, you should say, should be specified. Anything which is not specified in the tender, okay, or quotation will not be accepted. For example, like travel expenses. Okay, there are so many things which can come up along with that. Okay, upgrade, modification costs, licensing, and all that. Okay. So likewise, there are so many things which may not be included. Okay, Shyam, you want to have any? You have any points in point?
No,
in this?
I think you have summed it up, sir. Because it again comes back to being leaving room for being ambiguous. So which is why I was looking at that word when we ask vendors to quote, it has to be completely unambiguous, non-ambiguous, and there should be no room for maneuvering, because what it does, other than leaving a bad taste in the relationship, is also it delays maybe the contract till such time a resolution is come about, and it is likely to even increase the cost of the project. Because remember, we talked about budgeting also. I mean, travel expenses, all that may be minuscule, but if we were to put licensing rights or modification costs, or let's say spares or warranties, these amount to substantial amounts. These account for substantial amounts which may end up overrunning your initial estimates for the budget. So one needs to be extremely careful about these.
Thank you, Sean. Now let's look at the selection criteria. Okay. How do you choose the winning bidder? This is a question. Okay. Now this also has to be mentioned. The winning bidder, if any, will be selected solely by the judgment of the XYZ company. Okay. Now when it comes to government contracts, they will be more specific. They are more concerned about price. Okay. And this morning we were talking about Shyam. Everybody uses the word the cheapest price. Yeah. Right?
That's
okay.
Right.
Okay. In my mind, that word is a misnomer. It should not be used. Okay. Especially Correct. When you're making an RFP. Okay. The much more better usage is most favored price, not Correct. The cheapest. Okay? That is a wrong nomenclature. You can say as most favored price. Okay, right. Now, please listen to the participant. This question is for participants as well. Okay, I'm posing this question to Shyam first, but as participants, I want you to give your opinion as well. Let us say, can I take as a vendor, as an organization, okay, can an organization be taken to task by a vendor if he feels that his quotation was very competitive and it met all the criteria what is stipulated in the RFP, but still he was not awarded? What is the remedial measure with the vendor? Okay, participants, please, this is an open question. Okay, I'm just posing it to Shyam first, but I want to hear from you as well.
I feel that the vendor is also justified in making the buying organization open their books so that there is that sense of transparency that is there. Because in an event like this, it is both the organization, the buying organization, as well as the vendor that need to coexist in the space in which they are operating. So that element of transparency is one that needs to be honored. That's my take, Professor.
Right. See, to add on, what I would like to say is that the entire international trading is governed by the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris. Okay. It's governed by the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris, and there is a convention, okay, wherein if any party feels that there is an unfair means by which he has lost the contract, he can very well take it to the International Court of Justice.
Justice.
Okay. and he can explain in the court why, what are the reasons for his assumptions. Okay, so please bear in mind. Okay, that's number one. Number two, he can jolly well put a restraining order on the company not to publish the winner until the case is resolved. How do you like it? Okay, so
which effectively means, Professor, that he's stalling the entire project till such time a judgment is ruled or a ruling comes out in the judgment.
correct.
Which is not good for the buying organization because
Correct.
they are there with a specific budget on a specific time frame.
The reputation is affected.
Exactly, is at stake.
Right. What are the terms and conditions to be specified? Now look at this. Any terms and conditions of the contract must be listed for the vendor to make fair and honest response. That's number one. Number two, these may include financing options, contract length, renewal options, warranties, delivery penalties, service levels. Now, what more? Please, this is a question which I want to hear from the participants. It's a very simple question. What do you feel on these conditions? Is it inclusive, all inclusive, or are there more items you feel should be included in the terms and conditions? Or are there any hidden items which are not specified here? Okay, I just want to make a point which we will be covering up later during our session. Okay, see, you can see in the second point, financing options. Okay, warranties, renewal options, delivery penalties, service levels. Okay, all these are very important criteria which cannot be put in a purchase order. Okay, I'm just moving from the contract to the purchase order. Okay, these are all very important aspects which cannot be elaborated in a purchase order. So what is required is, okay, it can be supplemented in a purchase order by having SLAs. Okay, now that's also a normal practice wherein SLAs will explain more in detail. Shyam, can you explain the SLAs a little more to them?
Does everybody know what an SLA is?
Service level agreement, sir.
Correct,
Excellent.
correct.
Excellent. Yeah. So a service level agreement talks about what is my scope and what is your scope. And both are closely linked. And if you were to take a service level agreement of, let's say, a fabricated item, it may as well start with, I'm just taking an example and trying to make a small case out of it. It may as well start with, I give as a starting point on day 0 the drawings to you which are completely self-explanatory. I want by day 4 or 5 your quotation for, or by day 4 or 5, any questions that you may have in the understanding of the drawings that I have given, the engineering drawings. By day 6, I would want your complete quotation with the terms and conditions also. Now, in the terms and conditions, we talk from a contractor's perspective that either the contractor can ask for an advance, a running advance, and then the final one on the installation and successful commissioning of the fabricated item on site. And then the negotiations keep happening. So when you talk of a service level agreement and you start monitoring that, once a purchase order is issued for fabrication of a 100 kiloliter SS316L tank, radius this much, height this much, etc., etc. You specify from the date of the purchase order to the date of commissioning, how long it will take, and what are the time frames at which the fabricator and the buyer go for periodic inspections. Because in such instances, money or advances are released only on signing off of successful, on completion of certain milestones that we talk of. Now, all these cannot come into the purchase order, which is what Professor was talking about. These would form a part of the annexure, and once that part of the annexure is also put as a service level agreement, you put down the first the first inspection, the second inspection, the third inspection, and then the final installation, the final inspection, and let's say the installation brought onto site and installed. And along with that, you have certain amounts of finance that is being released so that the working capital for the vendor, who's the fabricator, does not get impacted. And you are able to maintain that entire duration. Now, if the service level agreement for some reason, the vendor has taken money post the inspection, but is unable to meet the delivery schedules, there is something that is called a penalty clause also. The penalty clause is also mutually agreed and can kick in. So these are some of the activities and attributes that I think of that should be prevalent in a service level agreement. Now, I took a very small and easy example of a fabricated item. This can cover the entire contract itself. A civil contract where a civil contractor has been tasked to erect a building to house 5 such equipments. Now, if you were to look at it, there are concurrent contracts that are running. 1 with the civil contractor, 2 with these fabricators who are going to get in machines, 3 with bought out items that are there, because each one of them will have to be scheduled based on the progress of the civil contract that happens. Now, if the civil contractor reneges on some of these delivery schedules, it is going to have a direct impact on the delivery of the equipment also, because the equipment once delivered cannot be installed because that building or the location where it needs to be installed is not ready. Therefore, you cannot hold the fabricator or penalize the fabricator, but definitely the civil contractor would need to be penalized. So the penalties that run across in an entire contract, which has right from civil to the machinery, which we call the plant and equipment, all need to be looked at holistically and be seen in a way in which the buying organization plays fair and is also in a position to impose upon the civil contractor a penalty that is far greater than what it imposes on the fabricator or the bought out item manufacturer.
Okay, thank you, Shyam. I just want to add my favorite topic. Okay, I will make it very short. Warranty. Warranty is one of my favorite topic. Okay, everybody talks about warranty. Let's say you're buying a new expensive machinery. Okay, it says warranty 5 years. Okay, but what does it include? Okay, it's an expensive machinery, and if it is not working, what are the remedial measures? Okay, now within the 5 years, probably let us say it has come over to India. Okay, it has come from overseas, it has come to India. Okay, it's tested, it is not working properly. They may send, let's say, okay, the Indian engineers look into it. Okay, since it is under warranty, you are not allowed to touch it. Okay, you will have to fly in somebody from overseas, or you may have to send it back to where it has come from. Okay, now the point what I'm trying to say, where are these things included? Okay, just a warranty 5 years does not mean anything. So like what Shyam has already explained, in an SLA, all these things can be explained in a proper fashion. That means if there is a failure, okay, the items have to be shipped back at their cost and they have to repair it and return. Now there is one more aspect, repair and return within what time frame? If it is going to take 1 more month, is the organization or the manufacturing, are they willing to wait? So if you need an alternate unit to come in, it should be mentioned in their SLA. Okay, now participants, are you willing? Are you able to visualize the importance of an SLA? That's why both of us have given such an extensive explanation. Okay, it's a very important part. A lot of people do not understand what an SLA is. Okay, can we move on? Hello, can we move on? Since time is getting short. Now time frame for submission of evaluation and delivery. Okay, there is not much in it. Okay, there is not much to explain it. Okay, how it has to be submitted, and how many copies. Okay, now everything is done online. Okay, so there is not much to be talked about. Process involved in RFP finalization. Okay, so you have to say in the tender itself, okay, how the finalization is going to take place and what date. All those things have to be mentioned. All bids will be reviewed to make sure they meet all the requirements. Negotiations, okay, with the bidder are expected to result in contract award in 2 weeks. Okay, now when it comes to negotiation, what is the opinion of the participants? How should it be worded? Is there a need to mention it at all, or you can do it at random? Okay, let's hear from the experienced people. Hello, come on, time is getting short. Before we close the session, I want to hear something more from you.
Negotiations will definitely help, sir.
Right, agreed. My question is, where should it be mentioned? That's my question. Can you come up with negotiations all of a sudden? So the starting point is, if you have to negotiate, it should be mentioned in the tender itself.
Yeah.
Got it. That's the point. Okay. That the negotiation will be conducted against the three best prices or whatever it is. Okay. But the point is, it should be mentioned. Otherwise, it will not be. It will be unfair.
Unfair.
Okay, this is the submission details. Okay, there is nothing much in it. Okay, this is the distribution. I just want to close. Now, before I close, okay, and stop sharing, okay, can just want to hear from the participants. How was your day? What are the recommendations you have being the first day? I know I had some technical glitches. Okay, what is your opinion about the first day? Can the participant welcome to hear from the participants so that we can do things better in subsequent days. Right. Okay. Waiting for the participants. We are right on time, madam. We believe in timekeeping. Okay, but I'm waiting for the participants. Please need your feedback. This is so that we can give you. Okay, let's understand where we have not done justice to you. Okay, so that we can improve it tomorrow. Okay, what is it? What was your expectations? Did we meet your expectations, or only it was covered halfway? Please, we'd like to hear from you. We are a progressive company. We are a budding company.
So let me try putting it in another way, Professor, with your this thing. I'd like to, I mean, one way of having this session would have been to have the entire, let's say, 2 odd hours, 2.5 hours over lectures and, you know, an interactive session with the participants. The other way, which we attempted to do this time, attempted with you, is to split it into 2 portions, one of which was the lecture to cover the basic, and the second was to have an interspersion of somebody like me, let's say, along with Professor Matthew, who is a subject matter expert completely, to, you know, move ahead and emphasize, re-emphasize, reiterate with examples on certain important aspects of, let's say, today we talked of the tender contract charter, so that it remains ingrained within you as you move forward in the journey for the next 5 days. So, yes. Was this, I mean, did it serve its purpose? What better can be done? Where could we emphasize more? Is what I think we are looking at as we move forward.
Like what we said in the beginning, out of the 6 sessions, we have incorporated the experiential learning lesson in 3. So today was the first session. Okay? So we are very keen to know how was our collaborative endeavor. Silence, golden silence means what? It doesn't convey anything. Displeasure?
Maybe, sir, it is like beyond the expectation.
Thank you for the compliment.
But for me, it is like I'm very much satisfied with the sessions. I learned a lot. Actually, again, I usually teach this subject, but today I came to know so many things which are not there in the books.
Correct. Madam, that is what we call it as experiential learning.
Experiential learning, yes, sir. That's what we are conducting this, like, so that practically what is happening. I'm teaching Rfp and all, and what are the things should be there, what should be the contents and all, how the selection of this, all these things I'm teaching. But today only, my concept of this particular is also got clear. So this, really, sir, I learned a lot from this session.
Yeah, from academic, you have moved to, you have learned the experiential learning.
Experiential
Now,
learning. The industry.
now you can mix up the two, you teach. Okay. Now, as participants, one last question is there anything which you want us to improve? Because the next day, tomorrow is going to be a lecture only, okay, where I'll be covering quite a bit of the fundamentals, okay? So my only request is please interact, because I'm a person, I cannot teach, okay, without
continuously. Yes, it will be difficult, sir. Interact.
Without interaction, you know, I cannot teach to the wall. I cannot keep talking to the wall, okay? So please, for heaven's sake, okay, wear your thinking cap. Okay, I'm a Toastmaster as well. So we don't allow anybody to sit quiet. Okay, we make sure people who are participating in a lecture or a training has to speak. It's compulsory. Otherwise, you will never learn.
Yes,
you know, butterflies will always be in your stomach. Okay, so these are all avenues where you can get out of it and then, you know, be better informed, so that, you know, as you grow up the ladder, without public speaking, you can never come up in your career. Okay, so one last thing from at least Nimisha, before closing, you have, can we hear anything from your side?
Sir, it was good, sir. It was
louder.
It was a really good session, sir. I learned a lot today, and I'm looking forward to the next 5 sessions.
You have taken from your workplace, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you justify to your boss?
Sorry?
Can you justify to your boss the leave what you have taken? Are you going to teach him tomorrow something? What you have learned?
No, I don't
You know, in a lot of cases in the organization, it's like that. When you get back to the office, you have to teach, okay, what went through in the training, because it's a lesson for others as well.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, so if there are no questions, please. Okay.
Sir, you can have a WhatsApp group with the participants so that the participants may share from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, madam will do that. See, that's always in our agenda. Always in our agenda. See, we just don't do a training for the sake of doing it. It's a continuous process. Okay.
But as of now, WhatsApp group is
madam
not
will open a group, and you can always ask questions.
Today only I'll do it. Sure.
Okay. And one other request. Okay. I'm a person who is in the habit of putting a lot of things in the WhatsApp. Okay. I want you to see it. I want you to read it, interact. It's like in a class, because these are all, you know, learning tools which has to be utilized properly. Okay.
So when the professor, when professor says that he is going to give you reading material, you can very well be assured that the second day session will start with a question and answer to figure out who has seen, who has read, and who has understood.
Okay.
See, I'm a firm believer that the teaching cannot be confined to the 4 walls of a class. Right, madam?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it has to be all-pervasive. Okay? Yes. You know, you have to learn. At the age of 75, I'm still learning. Yes, so.
Lifelong learning, sir.
Pardon?
Lifelong learning.
Absolutely. That should be your mind.
Well said.
Okay. And I think you are the person who asked the question to Shyam about the profit and loss, correct?
That's right.
Right. So you have a lot of potential. I'm repeating it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Take it. Okay. Try to study, make the best use of what you're studying it, and you will come up in life. Okay. All the best.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So if there are no questions, can we close for the day? We are right on time. We are
Yes.
Toastmasters. Yes, that is, we close, start on time. Okay, sorry. It was my fault that we did not start on time, but it was not that much delayed, right, madam?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's not. We are exactly on time, sir. No problem.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.
thank you so much, and
Okay,
see you tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yes, sir. We'll meet tomorrow.
Thank- Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fernand. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.